My candle's crooked, but it's okay.
People will forgive you. All right. Hello, everyone. Let me begin recording. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Seriously Human podcast, where we get into the human side of people who do great things. In this episode, I am continuing the series of interviewing my mother, and today we're going to focus on shifting patterns and subconscious beliefs and frequency and how we can move into alignment with these frequencies and change our patterns and ultimately change our life. And one of the most obvious ways that we do this is in regards to abundance, because that is a metric that is super quantifiable when we look at it of like, did we have it or did we not? And so I guess the first question I want to ask you, Mom, is when you were not in abundance, what was the feeling that felt different in your frequency? What were the main differences versus today?
I think I had a lot of sleepless nights worrying about money, um, which brought up the frequency of fear,
Mm,
which perpetuated more lack, anxiety, stress. How am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to save enough for college, for you kids? Whatever was coming up would keep me up at night. And also not only would it keep me up at night, and so I had the energy of sleeplessness, so my stress hormones were off. I was feeling fearful and anxiety. But also there was this sensation of not having enough, and so there was a feeling of being like less than and feeling unworthy that would also keep coming up.
right. So previously in your energy field, there was the frequency of fear and unworthiness, and this kind of kept you stuck for a bit. And how do you feel like those frequencies manifested into patterns or behaviors that ultimately were limiting on just like an action standpoint, your ability to, create more of the things that you wanted in your life, whether that's like spaciousness or abundance or peace, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it put me in a pattern of people pleasing, of overdoing, of being exhausted, overeating to mask my feelings, denial, not a wanting to look at my bank statements, not a willingness to see what the credit card number might be, just denial, pushing down, avoidance, a lot of things.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, what do you think the fear was? If you had to label what that fear was that was permeating your nervous system at that time, and maybe other people can relate to it, what were you really afraid of?
I probably was afraid of that I didn't feel capable enough to do what I needed to do to step into my full power and my alignment with who I was so that I could radiate the frequency I needed in order to embody abundance. And so I didn't want to look at it. And so I think that there was also um some frequency of was deeply unconscious, and all of this was so unconscious, right? If you asked me
Right.
in that moment, I'd be like, no, no, I have everything I need, things are flowing great, I'm in abundance. um with victimhood and like I feeling incapable, that I couldn't do something, or outsourcing my needs to be met somewhere else rather than internally doing what was necessary to come into alignment with my own authenticity and my own power.
And the word power is really interesting in all of this. And so, how do you feel like your definition of power has changed over time? What might it have been back then versus what it is today?
That's a great question. I mean, today for me, power is true alignment with your authenticity of the truth of who you really are. So power isn't something about being dominant or in control or hierarchy. And I think my perception did shift. I might have perceived or had an unconscious belief that many people who were really in a lot of abundance had a dominant or intense energy that maybe I didn't want to align with. And so I was I was putting those two energies together versus just true passion and authenticity to be of service in what it is that you want to do and love to do, and that is powerful. It's way
So
more
would
powerful.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And would you say that one of your main blocks to stepping into your power was your relationship with that word and what it meant based off of how you were defining it in terms of the people that it was associated to? And so you had a negative association of the word power, which made you resist stepping into it.
Yeah, and I think it was deeply unconscious. And it wasn't
Hmm.
until I started to become really conscious of my thoughts, my words, my actions, my behaviors, that I was able to transcend those beliefs that I had around power to something else.
Do you remember a moment where something clicked in terms of transitioning your belief system? Do you remember like an epiphany that you had or a story or a moment where you're like, oh,
Hmm.
right, this is actually power?
I think that I don't know that I can think of a moment where I recognized that, but I recognized there were moments where I realized, oh, I'm giving my power away. I'm not
Mm.
in my power, to the point where I would have some nervousness, and like it started to bubble up. It came up. The transition for me was my body got really sick for me to recognize and to be a gift or an instrument of showing me how out of alignment I was with my power. And then when I started to contemplate and really spend way more time in meditation and in stillness, those feelings started to surface. And as I became aware of those feelings, I started to affirm to myself, I am powerful. And it felt really uncomfortable. And I actually had to like reprogram my whole nervous system, the synapses, the way that I was thinking, and in certain situations that I would be engaging in where maybe I felt unworthy or unseen or invisible or whatever, I would literally say to myself in the car or going somewhere and to where I was going to be in certain situations, I am powerful, I am powerful, I am powerful, I am powerful. It was like obviously, I certainly don't need to do that anymore. That was a good, whatever, 15, 20 years ago. But at that time, when I was going through that transition, I actually had to like physically do things to start to vibrate with that frequency and to let my nervous system know, wait a minute, it's okay. You are powerful. Almost had to like pre-convince myself before I could step into those shoes.
Right. In a lot of ways, it was a reprogramming of your subconscious mind and therefore your nervous system.
Exactly.
And so you programmed from beliefs that you had developed inside of your body, inside of your subconscious, from experiencing the world in one way in order to get your needs. Maybe, like we talked about on a previous episode, on some level to get your needs met. Being sick was your ability to gain a sense of power, meaning I get to do what I want and live in authenticity over, you know, something that might have seemed like a more dominant force at the time. And so that was your relationship to power, but it wasn't, and the way that your definition changed was instead of it was like getting my will, it was being authentic to myself, right?
Because
And
the old way was hurting. Like I was
mm-hmm,
getting hurt by what mechanism I unconsciously had to put in place in order to be in my power versus fully stepping into my power and being like, being really clear and authentic around boundaries, what it was that I need, and really trying to be like, I need this versus it was a different way of operating.
right. And so in that you came back into harmony with your health was really the indicator of like the misalignment of power, that your relationship with power wasn't necessarily healthy. And so you started to shift that relationship with power by just starting to say, I am powerful. And how did the definition of what power meant changed over the course of you beginning to identify with being a powerful person?
I started to feel safe in expressing myself more authentically and having
Hmm.
much stronger boundaries and saying what it was that I needed, creating more time and spaciousness for myself, a lot more willingness for self-care. I started really like prioritizing self-care, expanding my time around meditation, shifting my food and the way that I ate, moving my body, doing yoga, doing breathing, going for panchakarma regularly, doing acupuncture, taking care of myself and what I needed to do to become into a balance and alignment over other people's needs. Where before it was I would do everything for everybody else, whatever they needed first. And then if there was a little tiny bit of time left for me, maybe I would do something. And so that was the big flip.
Right. And so it seems like you changed the source of your worthiness. And so what would you say where you got your worthiness when you weren't quite as powerful versus where you get your worthiness now?
I got my worthiness, I think, from being what I thought was a good person.
Mm.
Being sweet, taking care of everyone, being the one that was reliable, the one that would show up, like take care of my elderly parents or um, a friend or a sibling in need. Um, Being a support for so many people. And I really recognize this. I was at a family event. Whatever last year, and somebody in our family who I hadn't seen in a really long time, I said, "Oh, wow, you're doing all this stuff and you're traveling so much and your work is expanding." It's about, and then she said, "Yeah, because I just thought of you as somebody who basically was a doormat who just took care of everyone."
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like, "Whoa." Like I was like, "Wow, that's the perception that someone had." And I'm not saying that was just their perception and on someone I don't see often. But I was like, others were even perceiving me as, oh, we need somebody to help or to support, or Kelly will do it. She'll show up. We can count
Right.
on her, right?
Right. And so a unique thing here is that all of those things you described, you still do. You still show up for people, you're still consistent, you still, go out of your way to be generous and help people out. But what has changed is you're not a doormat because your worthiness isn't based on you doing that. It comes from somewhere else, right? Am I
It comes from somewhere else, and I don't do it because I'm trying to fill a need in myself. I do it because I genuinely love those people, care about them, honor them, want to show up, want to be generous, want to be kind, because that's my nature, but not because unconsciously it's filling something in me, not in the same way.
Right. So what you're saying is before there was kind of a covert or unconscious contract
Mm.
where I am there to show up and support and be generous and, do everything that I can for all of these people because that's important. But there was and the reason that you would do it beyond yourself is because maybe unconsciously, because you've always been someone who's like no strings attached, but unconsciously there was like, well, then they'll probably do it for me when I need it, right? There was a
Yeah,
little bit of a contract, or there was something, maybe not exactly what you were giving, but something that it was like, okay, I'm putting credit in the account, right?
maybe. Yeah, it was unconscious, or it was feeding something in me at the end of the day that like, oh, I'm, people can count on me. I'm a good, loving, generous, kind human being. And I was getting my value. from that on some level.
Mm. So the belief was like, if I can, if I have the evidence to show that I'm a kind, loving, etc. human being, then everything's all right and nothing else matters.
Yeah, then I am worthy.
Hmm.
Right?
And so, that sounds really great. And then the question is, well, why did that never fill your cup all the way? Why was that not enough in terms of making you feel worthy? Why did the cup continue to feel like it was spilling out?
Because I wasn't being authentic to my body and what my body needed. I was overextending and not taking care of myself. I wasn't being authentic to my gifts and really sharing them in an authentic, on a larger scale. I was putting other people's needs above mine almost all the time and in every circumstance. And it wasn't until I could bring that back into balance, where, of course, I still do lots of lovely things for lots of people. That's my nature. But I first make sure that I have my ducks in a row, take care of myself.
Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to is feeling that their purpose is to fulfill other people's needs. And if they're not fulfilling other people's needs, then they're worthless, right? In their own mind, in their own head. And so, what is, for someone who might subconsciously believe that on some level, would you say is the paradigm shift that either big pictures it or transitions that thinking without like fighting it, but just like smoothly expands that into a more expansive truth?
I mean, I think on a lot of levels, you can help way more people, actually, and be more effective when you shift into that mindset that first I need to take care of myself. And like your Uncle Arno was that example. He would come and be visiting at my house, and I would have made breakfast and gotten everything ready and gone out of my way. And he'd say, "Oh, babe, I can't do that now. I got to do my meditation. I have to do my Qigong. I have to do my journaling, whatever. Just leave me a plate." I would never consider that because I'd be like, oh, I have to run down and they made something and sit with them, right? He was prioritizing taking care of his needs and what he had to do first, even if it maybe was inconvenient to others around him. But then he also was serving thousands of people and
Hmm.
making a huge impact on the planet because he was able to come into alignment with what he knew he needed to do in order to be effective in the long term.
Right. And so something that Raphael says and that, I know that we both really believe is that it's less about what you do, but the place that you do it from. And so in a way of taking the time to really take care of yourself, you cultivate a energy or vibration, or you're able to do the action of meeting someone else's needs or cooking the breakfast or being present from a place of love, gratitude, abundance, etc., rather than from a place of depletion. Because
Exactly.
sometimes if you come meet someone's needs from a place of depletion, it's almost not worth it to them to have their need met, depending on who it is.
Right. And if you come to help someone from a place of depletion, you're vibrating in the vibration of depletion, which is the vibration of lack. And then you're automatically going to, as we were thinking about helping people with financial abundance, you're automatically going to be financially in lack, right? Because it's the same thing, it's the same energy, same frequency.
Right. And so why do we think that there is lack? What do where does that come from, that belief that there isn't enough?
I mean, I think it's been deeply embedded in our collective thinking and our consciousness, and our programming, in our educational system, a very competitive, get ahead of the next person. There's not enough, and maybe you'll make it and somebody else won't vibration. And it just permeates everything. And I believe we're moving more and more away from that into there's plenty and blessings and abundance for all. But if we are in a depleted vibration, coming into the frequency of abundance is nearly impossible, or at least
Right.
impossible to sustain. Let me put it that way.
So, yeah, so what I'm hearing is that the vibration of lack comes from the idea if you have, I don't, which is scarcity, which is the root of competitiveness. And when we're in competitiveness and survival, our nervous system can only manifest things, in alignment with that. And every decision we make, no matter how hard we work, is going to continue us in this competitive cycle and reflect back to us a world of scarcity. Compared to if we're able to calm our nervous system and move our consciousness to the next level of collaboration, where it's when I win, you win, and we all win together, and we're in this creative thing, that's where the creation really happens. And so, what do you feel is the way or the belief or the tool to help people transition from the vibration of lack, scarcity, competition, and survival when that might seem to be their reality, where like really they're struggling to pay the rent, food prices are going up, etc., into a more expansive place.
I think it's presence.
Hmm.
I have to come into presence. And so, even if you're in lack and scarcity and fear, if you can elevate your frequency at least into neutrality, into stillness, into nothingness, into presence, and you can begin to expand presence for a period of time through cultivation of breath work or meditation, that once you're in presence, then you can begin to start to focus on what is working, right? And
Hmm.
gratitude and the blessings that are there, even if they're simple, that your water is running, or you can flush your toilet, or you have a bed. And then that starts to elevate your vibration. And once you can start to get into that state and then begin to maintain it for a period of time by self regulating and becoming conscious of your thoughts. And, back in the day, in the beginning of my processes, you would hear me say at the house, cancel clear, right? If I would have a thought and it would come up and it wasn't in alignment with my vision, and it was an old pattern or it was negative, I would say cancel clear. Or you kids would be in the car, we'd play the grateful game, right? Which was stepping into gratitude and just playing and making it silly until you got to see the ridiculousness of what our unconscious beliefs and thinking are is all the time, and how we can just keep doing things to recalibrate and bring it back through conscious awareness. What am I saying? What am I thinking? What am I doing? And is that in alignment with my vision?
Right. And so when we talk about magic, Raphael has always said that it's always there, right? But it's also the same thing with the scarcity, the problems, the disease, etc. It's always there. And like they say, where attention goes, energy flows. And when we focus our attention, we ultimately water the seeds of that, and that expands in our reality. And so in meditation, the practice is coming back to either the visualization, the mantra, the breath, the present moment, and practicing having control over that focus. And like you said, they say that when you focus on gratitude, etc., and these positive things, you expand your prefrontal cortex. But when you focus on what's not going right, you actually shrink your prefrontal cortex, and you continue to complain, and your ability to control your focus deteriorates and deteriorates and deteriorates over time, which is absolutely crazy. And we also know of like the simple thing of the reticulating activator system of you buy a Honda, all of a sudden there's a million Hondas on the street, and there weren't yesterday. It's that focus. And so one of the things that is important in order to get that focus we talked about is feeling safe in your nervous system. And I just want to share two instances in my life where, I made a huge jump in my nervous system of safety. And one of them was actually the second time that I did a 10-day silent retreat in a monastery in Thailand, where you sleep on the concrete bed with the wooden pillow, you eat very minimally, you fast a lot of the time, you have no technology, no nothing, no heat, no comfort, nothing, just the same pair of clothes, no indoor plumbing, etc. And they offer you afterwards that anytime you want, whenever you're in need, you can go and stay in the hermitage and receive the alms food from the villagers and just live in a concrete box with a wooden pillow, etc., and a roof. And what happened for me is I blasted through all these levels of anxiety inside of my body, of these illusions of what I thought I did need, and worked to the point of, wow, I am so happy with nothing,
Hmm.
right? And allowing myself to calibrate my nervous system to realizing that my needs are actually so incredibly low. When I re-entered the world, I had this huge amount of spaciousness, right? Where I could exist in a lot of different things without feeling fear or risk or lack or worry or like I was on the edge. And so a huge part of abundance is feeling spaciousness. And if you can't expand your abundance, see if you can come into this moment and meditate on the gratitude of like, how happy can I be with the little that I have,
Hmm.
right? Is
Yeah,
that kind of
because
what we're
when
saying here?
exactly, because when you're no longer in need and you are in gratitude and you are at ease where you are, wherever that may be, whether that is the actual current reality or that is what you've envisioned the space to be where you are, then you're no longer in the frequency of lack because you're not operating or moving forward in your experience or your day from a place of lack. You're moving forward from a place of, oh, I already have everything, so I'm just doing whatever I'm doing that's in accordance and alignment with my authenticity and my purpose, and things are just flowing through me.
Right. And I know that that can sound like, oh, well, great. But I remember that this practice applied so greatly to me when I broke my back and I was in the hospital and they had taken me in the ambulance and we were waiting for the x-ray results back. And I was like getting kind of nervous that I wasn't going to be able to walk and I was having a bit of a panic attack. And I was able to calm myself down based off of practices that we had worked on, throughout my childhood and be like, in this moment, I am okay. I am breathing. I am alive. I'm here. And I let go of all these like fears of, I let go of all the pain that I was feeling. I let go of all the fears of the future, etc. And it's like everything's okay. And from that place of everything being okay, I had enough spaciousness in my consciousness to then ask the question, how is this going to be the best thing that ever happened to me in my life? And I was still going down the path of I might never walk, etc. Right? And I was like, you know what? It's going to be the best thing because then I will become an inspiration because I won't let this get me down and I will become a motivational speaker and speak to people about life, etc. And I was almost excited and ready for it, right? And I think because I had accepted it so deeply in my heart that I really feel like it could have gone either way while we were waiting for the x-ray results. And the universe, was like, is he going to accept it or not? Does he need the lesson or not? And it's like, I think I got the lesson in a micro amount of time of my willingness to accept whatever circumstances in front of me is that the universe is there for me, no matter what is presenting itself. And the question to ask is, if I can't see it right now, universe, how is this the best thing that you could have possibly done for me? Right? And we get the answers to the questions we ask.
I absolutely love that, sweetheart. And I've witnessed, I mean, that moment, talk about a mother waiting for that result to come from, right? A little, whew. I won't forget that phone call, but there have been other moments where I've witnessed that in you, where you have received news that was pretty intense and traumatic, and you were able to come into presence and be like, okay, this is what the universe has given me. This is a gift. How do I make the best of this? Very quickly, without really spiraling. And that takes a lot.
Well,
And
and it comes down to that prefrontal cortex strength that comes from, that's why Raphael says to meditate, to practice gratitude, to do all these things, because it expands that aspect of your brain that gives you the control not to get hijacked by the intense surges of emotion pulsating through your system in a moment like that.
it
Of it brings it like,
brings you into the center. So it's presence. It keeps coming back to presence. I mean, that's if you were going to put it in steps, that's the first step, right? You can't
mm-hmm.
allow your mind to go off like a crazy freight train into all the potential negative things that could or will potentially occur. And it's just like, okay, all right, I took it. Might have been a shock to my system, whatever that might be. And then, all right, how can I see this as a gift? How can I recalibrate? Where are we going next? How can I come into presence? How can I find the gratitude in this? How can we move ahead? I mean, your sister got news a couple days ago that was crazy, right? And she
Mm-hmm.
just took it with such stride. I was just so proud of her, coming into, okay, this is what's happening. All right. Now what's next? Now how do I see this as a blessing? How can I see this as a gift? And so but you could easily go into victimhood. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
victimhood and lack are so intertwined. They can't be separated, right? When we are the victim to outside circumstances, we are operating in a frequency of poor me, that everything's outside of me determine how I feel and how I am. And that is a vibration of lack.
Right. And it doesn't mean that when you step out of that, that you can control and manipulate the entire universe to bend at your will.
No.
It just means that you have control over the frequency that you're going to align with, and the universe is mirroring you and your decisions of the frequencies that you are consistently holding.
Yeah.
And so in those moments where yeah, where everything just seems like it's colliding and coming down. What I see is there's three steps, really. I guess four, if we're going to say coming into presence first. But in coming into presence, you need to accept reality. And so many people, and myself included, when I've found myself in a victim mentality, it's because of my unwillingness to accept reality as it is. Is I don't want that to be the case. I don't want to have to accept that, people die, family changes, etc. I don't want to have to accept that that person doesn't have my best interest in me, is manipulating me and lying, even though I've done everything that I can. I don't want to accept the reality that is in front of me. And until we do that, we're going to maintain the victim mentality in whatever it is. And so, if you can move into radical acceptance by being present with what is and grateful, you can begin to ask the question, how is this the best thing that ever happened to me in my life? Which brings you to the next step, which is you just make a decision. You just decide on how you're going to act, what you're going to think, what you're going to do based off of reality, and you commit to that decision. But we struggle with that so much because one, we don't want to accept what happened. And because we don't accept it, we don't know what to decide because we know our decision isn't based in reality. And then we question our decision and to commit to it. And the thing is, you can't accept the totality of the universe inside of your being. You're just not, your consciousness isn't big enough. And so, how can you ever make a fully informed decision that you can feel confident and committed to? Well, you have to surrender to something bigger than yourself. You have to surrender to a higher power and be like, I'm accepting as much reality as I can right now. I'm making a decision the best that I can based on that. And I give the rest to a higher power to take care of it. And I say, when you're in that state, you are in the most powerful state you could possibly be. Just fully committed and surrendered to what is with an intention for greatness.
Exactly. And intention is key. Because
Right.
then you are the magnet. You don't have, not that you don't have to do things, but if you're in a specific frequency and with that frequency you come into intention with the universe, which is not necessarily tangible, which you can't touch, smell, taste, whatever, but you are in full belief that that universe has your back. Boy, fast. You can have instant manifestation, creation of anything so fast because you're just vibrating as a magnet to your own intention. And then it's just flowing right at you. And you're like, boom, 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 wow. And then you're like, oh, I'm in the magic, right? And that's the
Right.
state that you get into where everything becomes synchronistic, magical, beautiful. And yeah, there'll be moments where things will come, but then that's how quickly can we calibrate and see it as something, as a perfect opportunity. And if you keep doing that and that it becomes your mindset, then you're always in a state of flow.
Right. And what happens is that the same thing that happens to you that happens to someone else. When you are in this trust, when you have calibrated your perspective to look at things in this way, something that might seem absolutely tragic to someone else, or like, oh man, luck was really not with you in that moment. You just don't even see that. You just say, I just trust. I trust that I am being led in the right direction, that the reason that I didn't get that job is because there's a better job that's more fitted to me and the service that I'm here to do on the planet. Or the reason that I didn't finish this race, well, who knows? I could have gotten hit by a car. That the divine is protecting me every step of the way and guiding me towards the destiny in alignment with the love that I hold in my heart if I practice bringing myself to that presence, to that love, to that gratitude, to that joy, to that peace. As long as I'm holding that, I can trust that even if something seems like someone attacking me out of nowhere, right? People would say that that's unlucky, some kid beating the back of my head or the guy chasing me through India or whatever. It's like, no, it's perfect. It's leading me exactly where I need to go. And people are like, you're crazy. You're crazy. It's like, am I though? Like, what is crazy? Crazy is dysfunctional. I'd say it's highly functional because
Yeah.
what's the alternative?
Yeah, the alternative is yada, 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 yada. I can't believe I was here and this kid did hit me and he beat me up and I got to call the school board and I'm a victim, right? Then you go down that whole frequency. Then you're aligning with that vibration. And so that's the alternative. And then you're embedding the trauma in your nervous system, in your cells, in your tissues. And then that trauma is informing through unconscious beliefs, your reality moving forward. But if you can nip it right in that moment and have the awareness in that moment, now we can't always because sometimes it's very traumatic and we have need time to process it. But the more we keep delving into the repeat of the story, the more we embed it in our energetic body, the more it keeps mirroring and creating more of that. And we all know that. And so we have to keep asking ourselves in these moments, how can I see the divinity? How can I find the gift? How can I recalibrate my thought process around this? How can I trust?
Right. And so I want to give this example of there have been numerous times where I've been attacked, right? Physically, like, just out of nowhere. People just come, start hammering fists, telling me that they're going to kill me just out of nowhere. And
Wait, well, there's been a lot. So in high school, in New York, in, I
in
mean,
India, yeah, and
like,
multiple times in all these places, right?
yeah.
And in Poland, yeah, wherever you go, there I am. Right? And so the question is like, okay, why was I attracting that into my life? And I think this is really key. There was a part of me unwilling to surrender the why it happened the first time.
Mm.
And I wanted to know why. I remember uh, almost every time that one of these things happened, I asked the question, why? What is it about me that makes me so punchable? Right? Where people feel like, you know what? This guy, we're going to just bash his face in. And I would say, why? And the universe is like, we're not sure. Let's give you another situation to see if you figure it out, right? And it was because I wasn't surrendering to the divine that, hey, I trust that that was exactly what it needed to be. My little ego wanted to know why. And so I kept bringing these moments into my life for me to kind of figure out the answer, but it was beyond my comprehension. And I'm sure that there is an answer, but I just needed to surrender it. I needed to surrender it. And that as I surrender it, it hasn't happened in like 4 months.
Good track record. Good track
Right?
record.
It's definitely calmed down because part of it is it was trapped, the trauma of it was trapped inside of my nervous system. And my nervous system was saying, we don't know how to handle this if something happens again. And I would say a huge amount of it was released out of my nervous system from doing jujitsu. Because in doing jujitsu and in learning Muay Thai, I conditioned my system of, okay, we have a standard operating procedure for this kind of physical contact, right? And I did the same and equipped myself with the same kind of emotional jujitsu of this is the standard operating procedure for this kind of, you know, altercation. And the more that I was able to up level my skill, the more it moved out of my system. And those skills that I learned in jujitsu and emotionally are the skills that I needed in order to be of service in the way that I am today. And if those things never happened, I wouldn't have taken the time to go and pursue those skills. And I wouldn't be the skilled individual I am today, who's able to help other people with those skills so that they don't have to necessarily learn the hard way, right? I can speed up their evolution through my evolution. And that's the perfection in it if I trust in that and surrender to that and let it go.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a process. But for those who find themselves in this moment, in that mindset, I hope it gives them an opportunity to be like, you can change it right now. Like you don't have to wait. You can step out of that and step right into seeing the gift.
And it comes down to surrender. It's are you willing to give it up
Right. It's
to
that old
something bigger
telling.
than yourself?
Will I let it go? When will I let it go? Right? Now.
Exactly. And so so the question that we started here, and we've kind of gotten a little bit off track, but it's all relevant if people are really tracking what we're saying here, is how does this relate to abundance and reprogramming our nervous system, our frequency to be calibrated with, you know, heaven forbid, financial abundance?
Well, yeah. I mean, that process where the angels came to me and showed me how to work with the energy for creation, for manifestation through like the toric field, through the spiral, through the presence of our, affirmations and visualization, all this stuff that what Wayne Dyer's been talking about this 40 years ago. I mean, this is basic 101 manifestation, but we have to do those steps. I feel in order to get to a point like right now, I can just drop in energetically, go into intention, open up my field, and manifest pretty much at will almost anything as long as it's in alignment with my highest good. But the process of getting here over time was I had to say, I am powerful. I had to create the I am statement. I am so grateful. The universe is, that I am receiving unlimited financial wealth from the universe. Or I had to stand in front of my toric field and my spiral and spin it every day for 30 days and pull in the energy and visualize it and hold the higher emotion and move into presence and keep seeing and visualizing and putting myself in that place where I wanted to be. And that's the process that we have to go over until we're just emanating and embodying that and that need. We still have to have intention. We still want to visualize and place our attention where we want to be, right? That's all key. And pay attention to our words, our thoughts, and our actions. But we get to a point eventually where it's automatic. We don't have to consciously make the effort because we've spiraled into a new frequency. But in the beginning, you have to consciously work at it, to be conscious of your thoughts, conscious of your words, conscious of what you're saying to everything all the time.
Hmm.
Really amplifying your visualization of and feeling the emotion of where it is you want to be and what that already feels like, as if it already has happened. All those things that we know.
Right.
They're important steps that should not be bypassed, I don't think, on a journey to abundance if one is really finding themselves in lack.
Right. And what happens is you rewire your brain in that way is that you develop the sense of worthiness, that I'm worthy of taking up space,
Hmm.
right? That I'm worthy of saying no and taking time and taking, etc. Like, I think the word that people have a really hard time with is take.
Is
And our
what?
relationship take, because they think if I'm taking from something else. And when you really surrender to something greater, you're no longer taking from other people, right? You're taking from an infinite source. And so it's like if I need money from you and I'm taking money from you, right? Then I might feel, oh, who am I to take money from you?
Hmm.
Right? Nobody. I'm nobody. I'm no better. I'm no worse, like, etc. I'm nobody to take money from you. But if I surrender my abundance and frequency to a higher power and I say, I am here to be of service and I trust and surrender that I'm going to make decisions in alignment with my best will and the highest good of all, and I am part of all. And, I will take the gifts that you give to me from an infinite source. I no longer feel like I'm in scarcity. And then things come to me, and it doesn't feel like I'm taking, it feels like I'm being given. But it comes from me feeling worthy enough to take up space, to take up time, to move my agenda forward, to ask for what I need, etc. Right? Which is a really hard thing for a lot of people is to feel like I can take time, I can take space, I can ask for what I what I need, God forbid what I want, right?
It's so true. And so many, like I was at this retreat a couple weeks ago, and everybody there were women, and many of them were like, "Oh, I can't believe I'm doing this, and I'm spending the money, and I'm taking time out for myself, and I could use this money for a family vacation, or I could help my kid, or I could do." I mean, that was the monologue for almost everybody. And we're so deeply
Hmm.
programmed that it's not okay to take up space or take time or do something for ourselves or saying no or have boundaries or do what we have to do in order, but when we do that we are operating from a full cup, and then we're really able to step into abundance and come into alignment with our truth, our authenticity, and be of service. And it's stuff that we all know, but sometimes we just need a little reminder. It's
It's
okay to take
okay.
care of
And
yourself.
and the key here is that you're taking care of yourself now so that you can take care of others more later. And you have to give yourself the grace and the patience to expand. And an analogy that I like to represent this is like if I only had $2 and you asked me for $1 and I was about to invest that $2 into make more money of like buy a lemonade stand, I would say, hey, instead of me giving you $1 right now, would you be willing to wait a week and I'll give you $10? But I'll give you $10 once I've made $100 from the $2 I'm about to invest. Everybody would say yes, but they have to trust that you are able to actually expand your $2 into more than what it is. Or else, if they don't trust or believe in you, they'll say, no, I want my $1 now, right? And a lot of times that's what we're saying to the higher power, right? Is we're like, no, I want my $1 now. I don't trust that it's actually going to get, more expansive and bigger. I need to take what I have now. Or, even from ourselves, I need to give that dollar now because I might lose both of my dollars by tomorrow, right? And when we have faith and we trust and we believe in ourselves that I have $2 today, you're asking for $1. I want to give you more than $1. Let me make, $100 and I'll give you 10, 20. Heck, I'll give you $98, right? Because I believe in myself that I can turn those $2 into $100 again. I'll give you the whole 98 if you just trust me and believe in me and have a little bit of patience. And that's like the vibration that we need to give ourselves in our body, that like if we give ourselves what we need and we trust ourselves and we have patience and we treat ourselves really well, we can expand things so quickly.
Exactly. It's the old thing, right? If you don't have time to meditate is twice as long as you were asked to, and trust that that spaciousness will create more.
Yeah. And it's hard.
It is hard because we're so deeply programmed in our construct. Work, 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 do, run, 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 rush, rush, rush. But that is not creating more abundance. We think it is, but it's actually quite limiting.
Mhm. All right, great. How do you feel? You feel like we got our point across?
Yeah, it was fun. It was nice chatting with my son. I'll take it any Saturday.
All right, everybody. We will be back next Saturday with another episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. We value you so much. Join us for the Wednesday call to ask Angel Raphael your universal question to help the collective. And yeah, check us out to learn more. Love, love, love.
Love, love, love. Bye, guys.